Hello grade 5 learners, how are you? In this lecture we are going to explain a new lesson that talks about quadrilaterals. So, in this lesson, our objectives are to identify 2D shapes. Actually, we are going to talk about the special kinds of quadrilaterals, the parallelogram, the rectangle, the rhombus, and the square. Also, we're going to identify the properties of each special quadrilateral. So first of all, let us remember together what's the meaning of quadrilateral. A quadrilateral is two-dimensional figure with 4 sides and 4 angles. So any shape that has 4 sides and 4 angles, we call it a quadrilateral. So the word quadrilateral, it comes from quad means 4, lateral means side. So instead of saying 4 sides, we say quadrilateral. So look around you. Where are you sitting right now? I want you to look around you. Can you see shapes in this room that could be called quadrilaterals? Actually, of course, you can see a carpet on the ground. It actually looks like a quadrilateral because it has 4 sides. You can see, for example, the window or the door or even the microwave. So all of these, we can say that they are quadrilaterals because they have 4 sides. Look at this biscuit. It's also a quadrilateral because it has 4 sides. Also the table, this table we called it a quadrilateral because it has 4 edges, 4 sides. Also those lines on the street, we can say that they are quadrilaterals. Also this, also we can say that it's a quadrilateral because it contains or it has 4 sides. Now I want you to know that the types of quadrilaterals are square, rectangle, trapezoid, rhombus, and parallelogram. So all of these are special parallelogram. What do each one of them have different from the other? So what are the properties of each one of them? We are going to learn today. So first of all, I'm going to talk about a square. And actually a square, it's a quadrilateral that has 4 equal sides and 4 right angles. So not any quadrilateral. Whenever you have here 4 right angles, and not only 4 right angles, and the 4 sides are exactly equal. So those sides are exactly equal. Then this shape is a square. Now a rectangle. The rectangle, it also has 4 right angles, but only the opposite sides are equal. So this side is equal to this side, and this side here, it's equal to this side. Also, we can say that those two opposite sides are parallel, and those two opposite sides are also parallel. Okay, so this is a rectangle. It has 2 features, two important properties. It has 4 right angles, and it has the opposite sides are equal and parallel. Now let us talk about, or let us ask ourselves a question. Is a square a rectangle? The square to be rectangle, it should satisfy its property. So rectangle, this is a rectangle. Remember that a rectangle is a quadrilateral with 4 right angles and the opposite sides are equal and parallel. And this actually works out with the square, because in a square the 4 sides are equal and the opposite sides are parallel, and it has 4 right angles. So what can we say? We say that as a rectangle, a square. So we can say that a square it's a rectangle because the properties of a rectangle works out with the square. But can we say that a rectangle is a square? When we say that a rectangle is a square, that means the properties of the square should be also in the rectangle. Let us remember this together. The rectangle, it has 4 right angles and the opposite sides are equal and parallel, but the square, it has 4 equal sides. Does the rectangle have 4 equal sides? No, so a rectangle is not a square. A square can also be called a rectangle because it has 4 right angles and opposite sides are equal and parallel, but a rectangle is not a square because it does not have equal sides. So our answers were correct. Now let us continue and talk about trapezoid. A trapezoid, as you can see, it has only one property that says that only one pair of opposite sides is parallel. So only those two lines are parallel. Those two are not parallel. Why? Because if you just extend this line and you extend this line, they are going to meet. So they are not parallel. Okay, so that in order to have a trapezoid, only those two lines are parallel. And parallel lines, as I told you, are lines that never touch each other. Okay? Now we're going to check if these are trapezoids. Is this a trapezoid? When we talk about trapezoid, just try to search for two lines that are parallel. As you can see, this line is parallel to this line. So is this a trapezoid? Of course it's a trapezoid because it has only one set of parallel lines. So this line is parallel to this line. So this is a trapezoid. Now, a rhombus. A rhombus, or in another word, we say that this is a diamond. So a rhombus, it has a diamond shape. A rhombus is a quadrilateral that has 4 equal sides. So it has 4 equal sides. So it's exactly like the square, but it doesn't have 4 right angles. Pay attention. So a square, it has 4 equal sides, but it has 4 right angles, while the rhombus, no. It has only 4 equal sides. So also the opposite sides are parallel, as you can see. So the opposite sides are parallel and the 4 sides are equal. Now the last thing we're going to talk about is the parallelogram. And the parallelogram is a quadrilateral that has opposite sides are equal and parallel. Which of the quadrilaterals we have seen are parallelograms? Actually, all the quadrilaterals are parallelograms because the square, the rectangle, and the rhombus, they have the opposite sides are equal and parallel. Only the trapezoid is not a parallelogram because one pair only is parallel. Is it a parallelogram? Let us check if it's a parallelogram or not. A parallelogram is a quadrilateral that has opposite sides that are equal and parallel. So, is a square a parallelogram? Is a square a parallelogram? Think about it very well. We said that the parallelogram, they have opposite sides equal and parallel. This side is equal to this side and they are parallel. Also this side, it's equal to this side which is opposite to it and they are parallel. So is a square a parallelogram? Of course it is. Now let us talk about the rectangle. So is a rectangle a parallelogram? Yes, it's a parallelogram because the opposite sides are equal and parallel. Even though they have right angles, but the properties of a parallelogram works out with the properties of the rectangle. Now, what about the trapezoid? Is it a parallelogram? It's not a parallelogram, of course, because only one pair is of two lines are parallel. The others are not, so it's not a parallelogram. Okay? Now, the rhombus. Is it a parallelogram? It's also a parallelogram because the opposite sides are equal and so let us just try to make this sketch. So here we have a quadrilateral that have 4 sides and 4 angles. We have the parallelogram, the trapezoid. Parallelogram, it has opposite sides equal and parallel, while the trapezoid, it has only one pair of parallel sides. From the parallelogram, we can say that a rectangle is a parallelogram with 4 right angles. And we can say that a rhombus is a parallelogram with 4 equal sides. And now we can say that the square is a rhombus because it has also one more feature, which is 4 right angle. And we can say that the square is a rectangle because it has one more feature, which is 4 equal sides. Okay? Let us now continue to talk about something else. So that's what I just said. You have to study them very well because they might trick you in those questions, okay? What's the best name for this quadrilateral? It's a parallelogram. And what are the properties of a parallelogram? They have opposite sides are equal and opposite sides are parallel. So this is a parallelogram. What about this one? Yes, it's a trapezoid. It's a trapezoid because it has only one pair of opposite sides are parallel. Now what can we say about this? What are the properties in this figure? As you can see, they have 4 equal sides, they have 4 right angles, so it's a square. And now what's this? What are the properties in this figure? They have 4 right angles, they have opposite sides are equal, and opposite sides are parallel, so this is a rectangle. Now what are the properties of this figure? Here we have 4 equal sides, and opposite sides are parallel, so this is a rhombus. Now we're going to talk about something different, which is called a diagonal. A diagonal is a segment that joins 2 non-consecutive vertices. What I'm trying to say is that look at this shape. Every point here, the point of intersection of 2 lines, we call it a vertex. Okay, but all of these are called vertices. So what's a vertex? It's actually when 2 sides meet. If you join a vertex with a vertex, that's called a diagonal. Also this is a diagonal. Also this is a diagonal. This is a diagonal, and this is a diagonal. So what's a diagonal? It's actually a segment that joins 2 vertices. In a parallelogram, the diagonals bisect each other. What's the meaning of bisect each other? Let us first try to draw the diagonals. So this is the first diagonal where the opposite vertices meet, and this is the diagonal, the second diagonal. As you can see, the 2 diagonals, they meet at a point. This point, we call it the meeting point of the 2 diagonals. It's the midpoint of the first diagonal and it's the midpoint of the second diagonal. So that's why we say the diagonals bisect each other. What's the meaning of diagonals bisect each other? That means they meet at the same midpoint. Now what about the rhombus? Look at this rhombus. We joined the diagonals. We found that the diagonals are perpendicular and they are also bisecting each other, which means that they meet at the same midpoint. Okay? Now what about the rectangle? In the rectangle, look at this figure. These are the diagonals. As you can see, they are not perpendicular, but they are equal. And they are bisecting each other. And now what about the square? The square, the diagonals of the square are equal, they are perpendicular, and they are bisecting each other. So all the properties works out in the square. So I'm going to join here the diagonal. This is the first diagonal, sorry for the handwriting, and this is the second diagonal. As you can see, they are perpendicular, they bisect each other, and they are equal, and they are perpendicular. Okay, so that's the square that joins all the properties together. Let us try to solve this exercise. Properties of quadrilateral. Rectangle. Let us first start with the rectangle. In the rectangle, this is the parallelogram, by the way. As you can see in the parallelogram, both pairs of opposite sides are congruent and the diagonals bisect each other. While in the rectangle, both opposite sides are congruent, the diagonals are congruent, and the diagonals bisect each other. In the rhombus, you know that the diagonals are perpendicular and they bisect each other, and both pairs of opposite sides are congruent. In a square, all the properties are found. What about the trapezoid? None of these works out with the trapezoid because the diagonals are not perpendicular, they are not bisecting each other, they are not congruent, and not all the opposite sides are parallel. Only one pair of opposite sides are congruent or parallel, sorry. Now let us continue to summarize everything. I want you to look at this drawing. So the quadrilaterals are all parallelograms. The special parallelograms are the rhombuses, the rectangles, the square. So let us try to write the properties. In a parallelogram, opposite sides are congruent and opposite sides are parallel, and the diagonals bisect each other. Those are the properties of parallelogram. The properties of the rhombus: the diagonals bisect each other, the diagonals are perpendicular, and they have 4 equal sides. The properties of a rectangle: 4 right angles, diagonals congruent or equal, they have the same meaning. And you know that the square have all these properties together. So that was everything in our lesson. Of course, if you have any question, you can keep it for our live session. And I wish you will watch this video one more time so you would understand all the objectives. Okay?